Happy Saturday. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about a very unholy alliance here in Ottawa. You need to know about this. Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.
Yeah, just about played you the extra there, didn't I? Well, yeah, we're not always 100% organized Saturday morning. Nice to be back with you. I was hoping to interview Michael Cooper yesterday, the member of parliament from St. Albert, Edmonton. And the last minute, he bailed on me. He said he had a real crisis to deal with. So I had a whole range of questions for Michael that he'd actually approved. And I was going to bring up the WHO pandemic agreement because nobody in the Conservative caucus wants to talk to me about that, apparently, except Michael. I don't know what he was going to say, but at least he offered to say something, which is more than I've gotten all week. And I've been canvassing Conservative MPs and at least one senator to come on the show to talk about anything, including the WHO pandemic agreement. And it's been like extracting teeth, is all I can say. You know, I like this to be a true journalism show where we actually interview people, newsmakers, instead of just reporting other people's news and showing other people's news clips. And I try to do that. And I hope you all enjoyed the great interview with Tamara Leach last week. That was really suppressed by YouTube, unfortunately. But I've got a couple of things I want to discuss with you today. And before I get on to how CSIS is working with EGEL, this is the LGBTQ organization, the notorious organization that is heavily funded by the federal government, how they're working together to go after parents and how they're trying to squelch free speech, prosecute people for hate speech, and how they're anticipating using the Online Harms Act to silence their critics, and how CSIS continues to work to try to put parents away. They're targeting parents as domestic terrorists, essentially. I've already reported this, but I wasn't aware of how closely they are working with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service to harass and eventually, I believe, prosecute parents for daring to oppose gender ideology in the schools and thinking that maybe it's not a good idea to have Pride season all year long and to have that rainbow flag flying in every schoolyard and to have that kind of indoctrination being stuffed down the throats of our young people. More about that later. I wanted to talk about the forest fire epidemic in Canada. You remember how Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre sparred about this in the House of Commons this week?
I can tell you, in conservative ridings right across the country, people are worried about droughts, people are worried about floods, people are worried about wildfires that are more and more severe.
No, they're not,
Canadians
because they know it's got nothing to do with climate
change, which is something he hasn't put forward while we are fighting climate change and putting money in people's pockets.
Oh, liar. Incessant liar.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's carbon tax applies on barns, on grain drying, on fertilizers, on off-farm vehicles. It costs literally tens of thousands of dollars for many individual farmers, all of which gets passed on. But the Prime Minister, instead of defending his taxes, resorted to a really wacko and unhinged claim that if Canadians just paid more taxes, there would be suddenly less fires. I thought that water and not taxes put out fires. But maybe the Prime Minister can clarify, how high would his tax have to go for forest fires to stop?
Good question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing the impacts of the extreme weather events that come from climate change that are unfortunately getting worse and worse every year.
Lies.
That is why our government from 2015 onwards has stepped up in the fight against climate change, because not only are we reducing Canada's emissions to the lowest level outside the pandemic in 25 years, but we're also stepping up in the jobs and technological innovations that the world needs to successfully fight climate change. We will continue to fight climate change, Mr. Speaker, and put more money in people's pockets while he sits with his arms crossed and no plan.
I'm just sick of hearing
The
about this.
Honourable Leader of the
You know
Opposition.
the weather is
Answer
not
my
affected
question.
by climate
Now he says
change.
that his taxes are going to make Canada a high-tech wonderland. Before, his claim was that it was going to stop forest fires. It's him that made the link, not me. Obviously, I think the link between the two is absolutely ridiculous, because his tax is not an environmental plan. It's a money collecting plan. It's a plan of government greed. So I'll ask the question again. He wants to hike the tax to 61 cents a litre. If it gets to that high and people are all starving in the streets, will that stop the forest fires?
Answer is no. It will not stop the forest fires, and we all know that. Trudeau recites a pack of lies here. Not only that somehow the weather's gone crazy and it's getting worse and worse, it's not. And the Fraser Institute recently released a report demonstrating that the weather's no worse than it was a century ago, 50 years ago. There's no escalating crisis with the weather getting worse, more floods, more fires. We just hear this ad nauseum, and it's BS. It's absolute rubbish. But you know what? The mainstream media, they just buy into this Trudeau mythology. I hate to even say mythology. Trudeau lies, Trudeau mendacity, Trudeau falsehoods, that there's somehow this climate crisis and it's generating fires. And you see this column from Bob Fife. And Bob Fife's an old friend. I first met Bob when I came to Ottawa and I was working in Parliament Hill. And I used to talk to Bob every week. And now he's sort of the senior man on the Hill. When Bob says, take Trudeau seriously, a lot of people will. And he says the country is on fire. Pierre Poilievre doesn't seem to care. Poilievre just doesn't seem to get it, does he? Doesn't seem to understand the country's on fire. Look around you right now. Is your country on fire? No, it's not. There's no more wildfires, forest fires than there's always been this time of year. In fact, the forest fires in Alberta and BC, which were flagged as being more evidence of climate change, more evidence that we need to raise that carbon tax to put out those forest fires, is mythology. Now, when Bob made those comments on X, he posted those comments in his column on X, he got a raft of replies from people saying, no, the country's not on fire. You see that? You see the red spots there? Those are fires in Canada. That's the forest fires. We're not having rapid growth in forest fires. The country's not on fire. You can see quite clearly from the slide. This is a lie. We're not dealing with some epidemic of forest fires. And besides, if Justin Trudeau was really concerned about forest fires, if he really believed the country was on fire, like Bob Fife says it is, why isn't Justin Trudeau investing, truly investing, and I use that word in the proper sense, not wasting taxpayers' money, but why isn't he investing in more water bombers and firefighting equipment to put out the forest fires? Climate taxes, carbon taxes are not going to put out any fires. Not a single fire, and they're not going to stop any forest fires from starting. What's going to stop that is when arsonists are put in jail, or when arsonists are arrested, because they are the ones causing most of the forest fire grief, not climate change. Climate change really can't be shown, demonstrated, proven to be behind any huge, vast climatic change in terms of the weather right now, or bad weather, or violent weather, or hurricanes, or floods, or forest fires. It's not there. It's simply the evidence is not there. The science is not there. And when Trudeau says he stands with science, he stands behind science, it's all nonsense. There's no science to prove any of the claims he's making. And when he talks about, oh, these good jobs that the green energy industry is creating, it's all nonsense too. Take people out of the oil patch and they become janitors at the best of times. Or maybe manufacturing solar panels. But, oops, the problem there is that most solar panels are already manufactured in China. So you're out of luck. There's not a lot of growth in the green energy industry. So Trudeau is once again fibbing, lying, telling falsehoods, being his usual chronic mendacious self. So this is all rubbish. I wanted to start off with that, and let's get on to the real guts. You saw my story with CSIS suggesting those who oppose gender ideology are a violent threat in Canada. Yeah, and this comes from a report completely unreported, basically, except for the Life Site News and my own publication, The Post Millennial. Nobody else wanted to touch this report. And this report details how CSIS is going after what they call religiously motivated violent extremists and individually motivated violent extremists. And what does that translate into? Parents who oppose gender ideology in the schools, and anybody who opposes the whole LGBTQ agenda in any way, anything about the indoctrination, anything about the ideology, anything about Pride Week, Pride Season, Pride Year, all of it being pushed down the throats of children in schools now. If you have any religious or faith objections to any of this teaching, you are part of the problem. You are a dangerous domestic terrorist. You are potentially capable of being responsible for violence and violent acts, and you are the enemy. That's what Justin Trudeau says, and that's what CSIS says. Well, guess who else is saying that? They're using the same talking points as CSIS. They're targeting the same people as CSIS. They're using the same language as CSIS, and that's a GELD, the notorious LGBTQ slush fund group. I have nothing better to say about them than that. They're a bunch of parasites who are collecting federal dollars en masse. Let me just read briefly about how much are they actually getting here? Well, millions of dollars. And they get it not in one installment. They're getting it every 3 months. They're getting $100,000 here, $300,000 here, $2 million here for conducting useless, stupid studies about how we can better make this or that environment safer or more inclusive for the people that they're supposedly looking after. They don't want equality. They want special status, and they want money. They want government funding. So when they got their way with the gay marriage, with same-sex marriage, it scratched their heads, their collective head, and they said, what are we going to focus on next? Aha, the trans rights movement. There's lots of money to be made from that, especially when Justin Trudeau becomes prime minister, because he's all for it. So that's what they've done. Let's have a look at this. This is fascinating because what they're doing is finding another means of making lots of money, keeping themselves employed, agitating for so-called rights, agitating to change Canadian society, agitating so 12-year-olds can get sex change operations, so 14-year-olds can get puberty blockers, and so we can call something that is really brutality towards children gender affirming care. That's what they're all about.
Back those, a drag queen story hour. Well, drag queen story hour didn't exist 5 years ago for children.
I must say, this is Shannon Boschy, and I thank you, Shannon, for this wonderful clip here I'm using. I encourage people to go to his site, Canadian Gender Wars Report. Have a look at the whole clip. Shannon, of course, was one of the guest speakers at the Million Person March. I introduced him. He is very active in school boards. He's very active in getting common sense people elected to positions of authority. Shannon, you're doing a great job, and this is a real expose.
Children. No one was doing that. And the way that
hadn't written the papers yet.
Right? The way that Egal is framing this is that they're the victims. It's like all of a sudden drag queen story hour is getting attacked. Well, use your frickin' head. You started something and you started pushing an agenda on children And people are saying no. This is the pattern of lots of people talk about this, the distributed narcissism or the narcissism at scale. The behavior of a borderline or a cluster B personality is to reverse the victim and offender roles.
Now, you see what's going on here. This is a slide from an Egal anti to LGBTQI politics in Canada seminar. And they're saying, what kind of people are going to be opposing us? How do we recognize them? So what does it say? I got to put my glasses on for this. Anti-gender mobilizations in Canada are strongly shaped by developments in US and UK politics. Now they go on about dramatic rise of anti-gender activities. The key players in Canada, who are they? Conservative right-wing populist and media. That's people like me, according to them. Exclusionary feminist and women groups who think that the transgender movement is hurting women and feminists. Far-right actors, whoever those are, and religious rights people. Now let's listen to some more.
They are the abusers. They're the bullies. They use intimidation. They use manipulation and lies and twist language. And then anyone who objects to them gets attacked and gets accused of being the bully.
And some of the key players in Canada, they can be...
Now this is directly from the seminar. This is one of the Egal's people talking
broken down in
right
different
now.
ways, but we have more or less four kind of key buckets. So we have, firstly, a conservative right-wing populist in a media bloc. So these are the folks who have the initial viewpoints against our communities, as well as those who spread them. So the right-wing media, individuals and channels. We have the trans exclusionary feminists and the women's protection actors. So these are the folks who claim that trans women are damaging women's rights, so-called. And we have the far-right actors and the religious right as well.
Not the people I know.
You're probably thinking, how are they actually spreading this message? People can't surely be agreeing with all this transphobic and homophobic rhetoric. Well, the anti-2SRBA players lean on neutral and common sense concepts like freedom of speech, democracy, and protection of children. I'm sure many people are nodding right now and because they recognize.
Okay, so that somehow invalidates those arguments? That it's improper to be talking about freedom of speech, democracy, and protection of children, because that's exactly what these people are after. They are not democratic. They hate free speech, and they are after our children. So it's somehow wrong to say that? I am sorry, I don't get it. This is not making sense to me at all. But what are they saying? So that's improper. You can't resort to that kind of argument. You can't resort to the truth. And that's what they want. They want you to shut up. That's all they're after.
These phrases.
Like parents' rights.
Well, okay, we should really stop pausing, but they're framing free speech and the process of democracy and protecting children as a dog whistle for anti-LGBT hate. This
Exactly.
is very, 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 very important. I talk a lot about ideological corruption in my other work. So this is actually really, really important that they're doing this. It's not by accident.
The anti-2SRBA players, they don't necessarily count on the majority to believe what they say, but rather they want the majority to defend the right to say it.
And in a free
so
world,
this works in their favor because they're able to use people who don't really know much about queer and trans issues, but they're...
Yeah, in a free world, that is exactly what we should do. We should defend the right for other people to say speech or say things that we disagree with, that we might not like. That's important.
It's been hard.
That's why we don't counter protest.
Yeah.
The million marches were counter-protest, but if you notice this week, we've put out calls not to counter-protest. Nobody's counter-protesting any of these things because we don't believe in shutting down other people's right to say what they have to say. We can disagree. That's the thing. We want to disagree. We want to be able to talk about it openly. What these people don't want to do, they don't want to talk about it openly, because when we talk about it openly, they have this rising tide of hate that they call, which is simply people speaking their minds, which is in disagreement with their worldview, which is a very, very tightly bound echo chamber of ideas.
Precisely. Thank you again to Shannon Boschy for your research in this. I've used the clip. I encourage you to go to his site, watch the whole seminar. He's got most of it on there with commentary. It's excellent. We need to know about this because these people are after our skins. They're after our hides. They want to shut us up. They want to put us in prison. They want us to be permanently gagged. They want us to never be able to criticize anything they do because it's homophobic, transphobic. It's hateful. We aren't allowed to have a differing point of view. We aren't allowed to have a different opinion. We can't fight back according to these people who think that they are the only ones who have a right to free speech. Everybody else has to shut up. Everybody else get in line, and we might allow you to say something. But as they say, it's a tightly bound echo chamber. That's what these people live in. They're constantly reinforcing and reaffirming their own notions of justice. And we've got to keep fighting back on this because this is absolute rubbish. This is absolute nonsense, and it's got to stop for the sake of freedom in Canada, not just free speech, but staying out of prison. Because they go on to say in the seminar, they know the Online Harms Act is coming. They know Bill C-63 will be there for their use at their disposal, but they warn, they caution. These people could still wiggle out of the prosecution they deserve by appealing to truth. And we have to find ways around that. We have to find ways that truth doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if they're right, just that they are seeming to be hateful. And that is a contravention of thousands of years of legal tradition about libel and slander. Truth is always a defense against libel and slander. And truth is a defense against these idiotic hate speech laws and the hate speech content of this Online Harms Act, which is coming up. Is this insane and odious legislation that has a thought crimes component that will put people on in-house arrest if somebody down the street suspects them of planning or plotting to say something that could be construed as hateful. All they have to be doing is thinking it at that moment. So this is insanity. So what does this come to? This means the Liberal government won't tolerate any criticism of their insanity. They won't tolerate any questions. Question period has become a clown show, a farce. We watch it every day here live. I know many of you viewers watch it with me. What happened? I didn't cover yesterday's question period. I probably should have because this incident occurred, and this is outrageous.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is proud of having one of the most stable and flexible financial institutions and financial markets in the world. Right. It is also true that Canada's fiscal position is a particularly strong one. What would put that all at risk, Mr. Speaker? The Banana Republic promise of the Leader of the Opposition to fire the Governor of the Bank of Canada, sending shockwaves to global markets and exposing homeowners, mortgage holders to intense interest rate risk.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Shepherd.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, more Canadians are now going hungry and homeless, and the latest annual risk outlook from OSFI highlights that 76% of mortgages will come up for renewal by the end of 2026. Now, the Prime Minister's high mortgage rates are creating misery for Canadian homeowners. And again, the Liberal government's own bank regulators flashing red stop signs. The Bank of Canada governor has said that out-of-control federal spending is not helpful. How much more mortgage payment pain will Canadian families have to face and endure to satisfy this NDP Liberal government's big government spending?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
That member should know better than to stand up and talk about financial markets when his own leader is the person that has promised to send tremors into the international financial system by taking over like some dictator the operations of the Bank of Canada and arbitrarily firing the governor. The governor who, of course, is watching inflation very carefully, and I know he will have noticed that inflation for the 4th straight month is down to the Bank of Canada's target range, and we want to continue getting that inflation number down.
The honourable member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Well, that overheated and over-the-top rhetoric is cold comfort to homeowners who are facing hundreds of dollars per month of increased mortgage costs because of their decisions during the pandemic. They doubled the national debt. They increased spending by $600 billion over that time period. That led to higher mortgage interest costs. At the same time, when the Prime Minister was saying that interest rates would never go up, they are so low they could continue. And mortgage holders listened to him. They took out more mortgages, and now they're facing higher mortgage rates, so punishing they have a hard time paying for it. So my question to him is, when is the NDP Liberal Prime Minister going to learn his lesson, and is he going to give homeowners a break on these mortgage rates?
No, you're not going to get a break, and you're not going to get an answer from this fathead Steve McKinnon, the House Leader. This is the same idiot who goes on about Pierre Poilievre offering a, how does he say it, a a la carte Charter of Rights, because Poilievre made one remark about the notwithstanding clause possibly being used for criminal justice issues. And now Poilievre and the Conservatives are the one endangering democracy, endangering the Charter of Rights, even though it's the Liberal government that is destroying our free speech. The Liberal government that's killing people with the euthanasia program. Give me a break. This is absolute nonsense. And they know it's nonsense. But they keep standing up. These are a collective group of windbags who are freeloading on the taxpayer expense. They've got nothing to add except the usual talking points, the script that's thrust in front of them every day before question period, which they faithfully read like parrots. These are useless politicians, and that is a double negative, because these people are doing nothing at all to serve Canada. They're doing everything to serve themselves, to serve their stomachs, to serve their careers, to serve their pensions. That's all they're in Ottawa for. And I'm sick of these people saying you don't have a right to ask any questions. Thanks for watching today. Please like this station. Let's beat that YouTube censorship. Let's beat Trudeau's censorship that's coming with the Online Harms Act, because we're fighting back hard here. We're pushing back hard, and I know you're with me on this. We're almost at 25,000 subscribers. We're just over 100 away. Let's move that needle past 25,000 this weekend. I'm going to be back tomorrow with more. And I'll be continuing next week as question period. We'll be going live every day. And I've got more to share with you about how this Liberal government is completely trotting on our rights, our speech rights, our assembly rights, our religious rights, and our rights as Canadians. So thanks for watching. Now I'll put that extra one again. Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard and being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right channel. If you've watched this episode to this point, you've watched it all. And that's really important for a small station like this. We always say subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the KRAYDEN resistance. Resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. And if you become a subscriber, if you're a supporter of this station or a member through Substack, through YouTube, and now you can be a local as well. That's so important to us, because I couldn't do this without you. I made a decision to become an independent journalist about a year ago because I wanted to bring all of my experience in the military, in journalism, to you. I don't promise anything I can't deliver. I don't offer clickbait. I offer truth. The truth is out there. And it's my job to bring that truth to light and to you. Thanks for being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right resistance, and we'll see you again soon. So we are in a